Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Gendering Geopolitics, where I have quick 10-minute conversations with women around the world on the pressing issues of today. My name is Emily Prey, and I'm a senior analyst at the New Lines Institute in Washington, D.C. And today I am joined by Yasmin Ullah, a Rohingya social justice activist. Thank you so much for joining me today, Yasmin.
Thank you for having me.
So today we're going to be covering what's happening in Myanmar. In 2017, the Tatmadaw began their clearance operations in Rakhine State and perpetrated genocide against the Rohingya people. There was no punishment or accountability, despite the fact that 152 states are signed on to the Genocide Convention, including Myanmar. So they pretty much got away scot-free with genocide, not to mention the past 70 years of war crimes and crimes against humanity against other ethnic groups in Myanmar as well. So looking at this culture of impunity, how did this help lead to the coup?
Well, when we look at the culture of impunity, it is not just a single moment. And as you mentioned, this has sort of been going on for the past 70 years, but it sort of start very small. Myanmar has had 3 coups so far since the 60s, and this is the third one. We're holding on the hopes that this would be a failure. The culture of impunity itself was actually through various different legislations and cultural shifts, and the push in the ideological narratives that alienate, that disenfranchise specific groups of people. And most of those are people who are different in terms of gender and sexuality, people who are, who belong to different ethnic communities, or people who are just deemed different from what the Tatmadaw or the military junta sees as an acceptable, a dominant sort of group that would likely support the Tatmadaw's point of view. And the reason why they've been able to carry out this culture of impunity for this long is because they also were able to justify a lot of those tactics, including monopolizing on the economic structure of the country. And so having power and having holds on so many different social structure of Myanmar sort of changed things and benefited them, and have been for this long. It can't be sort of boiled down to just one single moment, but all of the things that the Myanmar military have been able to get away from day one sort of propel them towards this coup and the manifestation of how immune they are from accountability and from international what is it called? International accountability and measures to punish them for their war crimes and crimes against humanity and genocide. So it has been going on for a very long time, but it was fueled by the structural and economic and social disparity.
So Rohingya women tried to warn the international community about what the Tatmadaw is capable of. Karen and Chin and other ethnic nationality women have extensively documented the violence that they've experienced at the hands of the military. And at this point, it's been well over 100 days since the coup. Hundreds have died. They've been murdered by the Myanmar security forces, and thousands have been arrested or detained. Why are people still not listening to women?
Oh, you're asking a very, very difficult question. I would really, in short, in one word, women are still not taken seriously. And this is patriarchy, this is sexism, this is misogyny in full view. Women have a harder time getting their voices heard. And unfortunately, that is a global trend, not just specific to Myanmar or Rohingya as a case, but it extends far beyond any borders or any nationalities. It is something that women have to deal with, especially in the advocacy world, where whenever they bring up concerns, whenever they bring up issues that are extremely worrisome, they're met with not just reluctance, but they're also not quite believed in the same ways that if the issues are brought by people from a social hierarchy that is a little bit higher than them would bring, and those are like social indicators, like being of white race, being being a man, being a cis het man, for example. Those are just social factors that sort of come into play. And this is why a lot of the reports, or a lot of the things that women who are from the Rohingya community, or from any other ethnic communities, or women in general, who might bring up reports or bring up concerns, would not be believed in the same way that Western INGOs would bring, for example, those same concerns. And I think that a lot of the structures that we see, for example, like the UN, or more regional structures like the ASEAN, all of these are all propelled in some ways by patriarchy, and it sort of muzzle and silence women along the way as we try to influence changes from within, or from the outside, by raising awareness and whatnot. And so we have a lot more work to do, other than stopping and preventing further human rights violation from taking place. And it sort of is a vicious cycle where the patriarchy manifests itself within the realm of human rights and advocacy. And then we're trying to address the issues on the ground, stopping the violations of human rights that are perpetrated by the Tatmadaw, or by other power structures. And they're also influenced by those same sexist views, or those same misogynistic tactics, and they all feed off of each other. And that's why, going back to your first question, that's why the Tatmadaw have been able to do so much for so long, because they're immune to the criticism, and because there is this sort of hypocrisy within the international legal mechanism, or international community, international fora in general, where on one hand you would have a lot of criticism, a lot of concerns being raised, a lot of statements released about how concerned international entities are. And then on the other hand, in the past 70 years, the military enterprise is still benefiting off of foreign companies and foreign investments that come from nation states around the world, even the Western democratic one. So we're giving off mixed signals, and we really can't hope that the Tatmadaw will hold itself accountable.
So the coup has united ethnic nationality groups across the country, and we saw in the beginning photos of Burmese protesters holding signs apologizing to the Rohingya for not listening and for not understanding about the genocide. Do you think that this unity will last?
I would hope so. That's the only thing that I could probably hope for. I don't have the luxury of hoping or thinking otherwise, because then I probably fall into the depth of despair. I know that the current perception of unity did not just come about from the coup itself, from General Min Aung Hlaing staging this coup after being the mastermind of the genocidal acts in 2017. It was actually the groundwork that many of my colleagues in Myanmar have already put efforts into. And that was from, the White Rose campaign, the various different campaigns that my colleagues, human rights defenders who are not Rohingya, who sometimes are Burma Buddhists themselves, have put into work on the ground in Myanmar for the past many years. And these, were met with a lot of contempt, were met with a lot of challenges from, at that time, the culture and the fear that was instilled in people. And I think part of that fear was not just the fear of the Tatmadaw or the fear of retaliation that would come from them, but the fear that they would have to put into work to fix a structure that has not been working. And I think that this is sort of shared around the world, where when a structural problem is raised, we are just so overwhelmed by it that we just want to turn away from it and pretend that it never actually existed in the first place. And what that does is it exacerbated the issues even more. So these different expression of support or expression or acknowledgement, recognition of Rohingya plight it did not come about out of thin air. It was actually, the work and the collaboration that people on the ground have already put into for many years. And now it manifests itself during the coup because people are put into a stressor and they are, they're almost forced to understand and to put themselves in our shoes and in other ethnic communities' shoes. And I would hope that it would last, and I'm doing my best to influence the narratives in that way, to help people understand better that Rohingya are not trying to be resentful. We're just reclaiming our rightful places at the table. And that is the only way that this country can actually move forward, by eradicating the ideologies that the military actually pushed forward for many years.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Yasmin. This has been incredibly interesting, and I've learned a lot. I'm sure the audience has learned a lot as well. So thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me.